Welcome in to another bonus episode of Hockey Inside Out. I'm your host, Moe Khan, alongside Stu Cowan and Rick Green. We're joined by Pat Hickey, who is retiring this week after a 57-year career in journalism, a Montreal Gazette sports columnist who has covered the Montreal Canadiens since 1991. Pat, I must ask you, your lasting memory covering the NHL and your favorite city to visit during your NHL travails.
Yeah, my favorite memory is covering Jean Béliveau's 500th goal. It was one of the few times that I got to cover a game when I was at the Montreal Star, and that was, a huge night. I ended up on the front page, mostly because of Jean Béliveau, not because of my story. And but that was a great memory. The 93 Stanley Cup win. There were some nights. I mean, there was a game that stuck in my mind early, and I covered Lou Nanne's only NHL hat trick. I don't know why I remember that game, but I did. And early in my career, the first couple of games, I remember the first road trip I did was to Vancouver for the Montreal Star, and did a feature on Bobby Lalonde, who had played for the Junior Canadiens, and I remember one night a Junior Canadiens game, and the Junior Canadiens set the record for the largest crowd at the Forum, and the featured attraction. This is one of the years they won the Memorial Cup, and they had all these tremendous players, Gilbert Perreault and Ray-Jean Houle. And but the featured attraction that night was Steve Giordano playing for the Marlies, and Alan Glebensky, who Stu knows quite well, playing for the Junior Canadiens. And these guys were brawling, and that was the feature attraction. And as far as the favorite city. As far as a favorite city, I mean, I grew up in New York, so I always enjoyed going back there. There are very few cities in the NHL you appreciated going to Florida at Christmas time. There are very few cities that I don't enjoy going to. Anaheim is one. I mean, there's really not much to do there unless you want to go to Disneyland. Every other city, I managed to find places to go. Raleigh, it's kind of difficult because the rink's out in the middle of nowhere. Ottawa, the same way. Edmonton can be cold. I found I had a surprisingly good time in Winnipeg. I tried to avoid Winnipeg for about 50 years. With great success, and but when I finally got to do a couple of games there, I had some friends there, and that made it easier. So there's, as I say, there's very few places that I didn't enjoy going to, and as Stu knows, I've found places to drink in most of them, and places to have fun. It's great, being able to travel and being able to see things. Some people might be surprised that one of the things I like to do when I go on the road is go to art galleries. There's also a myth out there that I hate to fly, and that's not true. I actually love flying. I hate airports. And I've been stuck I once got stuck on the ground for 7 hours in Winnipeg, waiting for a flight to Minneapolis. And one of the delays was because the brakes froze. Now, if you're in Winnipeg and you don't know that it's cold, and there's a possibility your brakes are going to freeze on the plane, then you're not doing it right. And I actually had one really good experience on a delay. I was coming back from St. Louis, and I got to LaGuardia for my connecting flight to Montreal, and I learned that the flight had been canceled. It was on a Saturday afternoon, and they said, "But don't worry, we booked you on a 7:00 flight tomorrow morning out of JFK, which is I can move from one airport to another." And they said, "We'll put you up at a hotel near LaGuardia." And I said, "Well, isn't JFK on the other side of the island? If I could stay there." So they said, "Well, we'll see what we can do." And they got me. I went from a Holiday Inn to a Hilton at JFK, and they gave me a limousine ride over there. And I got there. I put my bags down. I immediately took the SkyTrain into Manhattan, had dinner, saw a Broadway show. So I told them, "Look, I'm an old guy, and I'm here in this strange city, hoping they didn't check my passport, showed that I was born in New York City, and they gave me a $50 voucher. And by the time I got back to Hilton, because it was an airport hotel, the bar was still open late, and I used the $50 voucher there. And the next morning, I flew back to Montreal."
Mm-hmm. Your good time in Winnipeg, Pat, might have something to do. What's the name of that bar, the hotel bar near the rink? That's a pretty normal hangout for a bunch of hockey people.
Moxie's?
Yeah, it might be. No, it's the other one in the hotel. I can't remember the name of the hotel bar, but there's a few places down there. But Pat in his retirement could be a travel guide because he knows so many of these NHL cities like the back of his hand, and none more so than New York, where he grew up. And I was fortunate enough to cover a playoff series in New York with Pat, and he showed me all his sort of favorite cool spots, including one of the best Italian restaurants I've eaten at, and a little bar that's sort of off the beaten track. That's one of the coolest bars I've ever been to. Also,
Stu likes the Italian restaurant because it's all you can eat.
Now, Rick, can you vet Pat's travel that Anaheim's not a good city from your travels during the NHL as well?
Well, strangely enough, for me, Quebec City was a great spot, and I don't want to tell you why, but when it wasn't the weather, but it was just a fun city. We had a lot of fun there, and as Pat can attest to, over the years, you run into so many great souvenirs, whether it's bar, restaurants, people, price lists that you'll never forget. And, once again, I just want to send my very best to Pat for, health and happiness on this really extraordinary career. So take care of yourself.
Thanks. Pat's been a colleague for more than 30 years, and more importantly, a great friend and a mentor for that time. So, Pat, miss working with you, man. Soon it's going to be the press box not going to be the same without you sitting there.
Thanks, Steve.
Last question, Pat. Outside the Bell Center, which NHL arena had the best media food?
That's a loaded question.
Pretty far down the line. There's a lot of places that have the best. Going out to Calgary, and several times there they had prime rib of Alberta beef, which was outstanding. Carolina was always good. Among other things, they would have barbecue. Tampa Bay is outstanding. Boston used to be terrible, but it got better in the last dozen years, and they really did a job during the playoffs. So in one year they had a guy making macaroni and cheese, and they would add bacon to it, or all sorts of different things. You could customize it. They had lobster one year. Quebec City, which again, as Rick alluded to, was a great place to go to. And one year when Marcel Aubut was, they played the Canadiens in the playoffs, and Marcel Bou wanted to make a point, and he had the chef from the Café de la Paix, which is a very high-end restaurant in Quebec City, come and cater the meals. So we had lobster one night, we had salmon. It was just fantastic. You're basically trying to show up the Canadiens. Marcel Bou just liked to put on a show, and he always enjoyed it. I remember one year they had the draft there, and Marcel Bou arranged for wives and guests to take a cruise down the St. Lawrence River, and so my wife was on the cruise, and I picked her up afterwards, and I said, how was the cruise? And she said it was great. She said I spent a lot of time on the deck smoking with Guy Lafleur.
One of Pat's lasting gifts for us at the Bell Center is we had a meeting earlier this season with Jeff Molson and France Margaret Belanger, the woman who heads Group CH. And she was asking Pat about the media meal and whatnot. And Pat explained that it's not very good at the Bell Center and that they were going to jack it up from $15 to $20 a meal. And Pat basically said that, for what we get, it's not really worth $20, and the price stayed at $15 this season. So Pat, thanks to you, we all save $5 a meal at the Bell Center.
Well, we'd love to converse even more stories about Pat Hickey's amazing career covering the sport of the NHL. Well, don't forget, submit your questions and comments here at Hockey Inside Out. We look forward to conversing about that in a future episode. Check out the YouTube page for all the Hockey Inside Out stuff that you want to check out. And sign up to the newsletter at MontrealGazette.com/newsletters. And for full episodes and bonus content, head on by Hockey Inside Out. On behalf of Rick Green, Stu Cowan, and Pat Hickey, it's been a great episode. We'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.